It's Basement Integrity Time, the podcast by IcyReno. Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
This week's deep dive is called The Domino Effect, how basement lowering impacts your neighbor.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
This is a big one for us here at IcyReno,
Especially in Toronto.
especially in Toronto.
You know, these houses are so close together.
Yeah.
A lot of these older neighborhoods like
Roosevelt,
the Danforth,
Liberty Village.
Liberty Village.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of our clients, a lot of our listeners are in these areas.
totally.
And, you know, the need for space in Toronto is huge.
Oh, my goodness, tell me about it.
So, you know, today's deep dive is all about understanding what happens when we lower a basement.
And what happens to your neighbor?
What happens to your neighbor? You know, we did a previous deep dive a couple weeks ago.
Foundation goals, Toronto's real estate boom, and basement underpinning.
Yeah. You know, we talked about the need for underpinning and the real estate boom that's going on.
Yeah. But today, we're really zeroing in on what happens to your neighbor's house when you lower your basement.
Yeah, and for you, the listener, a good analogy to have in your head is these older Toronto houses. Picture them all lined up as like books on a bookshelf,
Okay.
right? Right next to each other. And if you start digging down underneath your house,
You're going to affect books next to it.
you're going to affect the books next to it.
Okay, so I like that analogy. So really what you're saying is like when we excavate underneath a house in Toronto, we're affecting the soil.
Absolutely.
That is supporting their house too.
That's right.
We're destabilizing the soil a little bit.
So soil destabilization, it's a big deal because, you know, we can't just dig out the entire basement at once.
Right.
We have to do it in stages,
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 feet sections.
3 or 4 feet at a time.
We dig down, and then we support it, then we go to the next 3 or 4 feet.
And support it, yeah.
But by doing that, we're taking away soil that is essentially holding up both houses.
Right.
And that soil movement can cause all sorts of issues.
So for the listener out there, what are some of the issues that we could see on a neighbor's property when we're lowering a basement?
So the most common things we see are cracks.
Cracks.
Yep.
In their walls.
In their walls, especially around doors and windows.
Okay.
Floors can become unlevel.
Oh, wow.
You know, foundations can settle.
So we're not talking about the house falling down.
No.
But we are talking about potential problems.
Definitely potential problem.
For your neighbor.
Yes.
Okay, so what are some of the things that we do at IcyReno to prevent these problems?
So underpinning is a very precise technique.
Right.
We have to be very careful
Right.
about how we excavate, how we support the soil.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have to make sure that the neighbor's house
Right.
is well supported
Okay.
throughout the entire process.
Now, one thing that we've talked about in the blog, too, is vibration.
Oh, yeah, vibration.
You know, and how vibration can cause a problem for a neighbor's foundation as well.
Absolutely.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
So think about it. We got big excavators,
Right.
you know, jackhammers,
Dump trucks.
trucks,
All this heavy equipment.
all this heavy equipment making vibrations in the ground.
Yeah.
And those vibrations travel
Yeah.
and they can affect the neighbor's foundation.
So what do we do about that?
Well, first of all, we do a pre-construction survey.
Yeah.
We go and we take a look at the neighbor's property.
Right.
We document any existing cracks or any existing damage.
Before we even start.
That's right.
That's smart.
And then we monitor the vibrations
Yeah.
during the excavation process.
Okay.
And we make sure that the vibrations are kept
To a minimum.
to a minimum
Okay.
within acceptable limits.
Now we're in Toronto.
Yeah.
And Toronto has a lot of different soil types.
Oh, so many different soil types.
Doesn't it? So talk to me about some of the challenges that we face with the different soil types in Toronto.
Well, some areas have really good clay,
Right.
which is very stable.
Stable.
Other areas have a lot of sand,
Which is not as stable.
not as stable, and in some areas even have fill,
Yeah.
which is, you know, basically garbage that they dumped in there 50 years ago
Yeah.
to fill in ravines and stuff like that.
So we really never know what we're going to get
We never know
until we start digging.
until we start digging.
And the soil can change from one property to the next.
Absolutely.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So another thing that I know we talk about a lot in the blog is drainage.
Oh, drainage.
Yeah.
Big one.
Because a lot of these houses in Toronto are older.
Yes.
And they have, you know, weeping tile systems that are also old.
Oh, yeah. Ancient weeping tile.
Ancient weeping tile.
Clay tile.
Clay tile, yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that affect a basement lowering project and the neighbors?
Well, when we dig down, we're changing the groundwater flow.
Right.
And if we're not careful, we can actually direct water.
Towards the neighbor?
Towards the neighbor.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful about that.
Very careful.
So how do we protect the neighbor?
Well, we have to make sure that we install a proper waterproofing system.
Okay.
And we have to make sure that the weeping tile is
working.
Yeah. And in many cases, we have to replace the weeping tile.
Yeah.
If it's not working properly.
Now, another thing that we've talked about in the blog is how underpinning can change the load-bearing forces on adjacent foundations.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. So how does that work?
So, when we underpin a house, we're essentially transferring the weight of the house down to a deeper level.
Right.
And that can sometimes put extra pressure on the neighbor's foundation.
Okay.
Especially if the neighbor's foundation is older and not as strong.
So what do we do about that?
Well, we have to, analyze the situation.
Right.
We have to look at the strength of the neighbor's foundation.
Yeah.
And we might have to recommend some additional support for the neighbor's foundation.
Cool.
Like carbon fiber.
Okay.
Or steel beams.
Steel beams, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a lot about the technical side of things, but we also have to talk about the legal and neighborly aspects of basement lowering.
Right.
So what are some of the things that homeowners need to be aware of in terms of the legal
first of all,
and neighborly?
Yeah. First of all, you have to get a permit from the city.
Right.
And the city has very strict requirements for underpinning. And you have to have a structural engineer design the underpinning.
Okay.
And you have to have a licensed contractor.
Like IcyReno.
Like IcyReno.
Of course, yeah.
Do the work.
Yeah.
Now, from a neighborly standpoint,
yeah,
this is where it gets a little bit tricky sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because you're impacting your neighbor's life.
Absolutely.
So how do we deal with that?
Well, communication is key.
Communication is key.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to talk to your neighbor.
Yeah.
You have to let them know what you're doing.
Right.
You have to let them know the timeline.
Yeah.
You have to be respectful of their property.
Right.
And, you have to try to minimize the disruption to their life.
So things like dust control.
Dust control.
Noise control.
Noise control.
Working hours.
Working hours. All that stuff.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you have to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
Maybe offer to pay for their parking.
Right.
While we're working.
Yeah.
Or maybe offer to buy them dinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just be a good neighbor.
Be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, even with all the precautions that we take, sometimes things do go wrong, don't they?
It happens.
It happens, yeah.
It's construction.
It's construction, yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that can go wrong?
Well, sometimes we hit unforeseen soil conditions.
Okay.
Sometimes we discover that the neighbor's foundation is not as strong as we thought it was.
Yeah.
Sometimes things just happen.
Yeah.
You know?
So what happens if something does go wrong?
Well, that's where insurance comes in.
Insurance.
Yeah.
So we have insurance.
We have insurance.
Well, homeowners should have insurance.
The homeowner should have insurance.
Yeah.
And, we'll work with the insurance company.
Right.
To make sure that everything gets fixed.
To make things right.
To make things right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap this up.
Okay.
If you're a homeowner in Toronto.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about lowering your basement.
Right.
What are the key takeaways from this deep dive?
Okay.
What do you want our listeners to remember?
Well, first of all, hire a professional.
Hire a professional.
Yeah.
Don't do this yourself.
Don't do this yourself.
Yeah.
This is not a DIY project.
This is not a DIY project.
No.
Okay.
Second of all, communicate with your neighbor.
Communicate with your neighbor.
Yeah.
Be a good neighbor.
Be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And third of all, be prepared for the unexpected.
Be prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Things happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So just be prepared.
Excellent. Well, that's another deep dive in the books.
Another one.
We're here at IcyReno.
Okay.
We've been doing this for a while.
Since 2009.
Since 2009, yeah. We've seen it all.
Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about lowering your basement, give us a call.
Absolutely.
We'd be happy to talk to you.
Free consultation.
Free consultation. No obligation.
No obligation.
Yeah, just come on in.
Come on down.
And check out our website, too.
IcyReno.ca.
IcyReno.ca, yeah.
We have lots of information there.
Lots of good information.
Blog articles.
Blog articles, yeah.
All sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff. Yeah. We're the basement lowering experts in Toronto.
Absolutely.
So give us a call.
Yeah.
And until next time,
Stay dry.
Stay dry!